Earth received the SOS at a quiet hour. When most of the planet was asleep and the stars above the Sol system looked calm and harmless, the signal was old, broken, and filled with fear. It came from a small border colony far from major trade routes. The voice in the message was not human. It shook as it spoke. Ships were burning. Cities were falling. Children were hiding underground. The sender begged anyone listening to help. In the wider galaxy, this kind of message was common. Many worlds were weak. Many borders were unsafe. The usual answer was silence. Galactic powers preferred balance and delay. They talked, voted, and waited until it was too late. Saving lives was expensive. War was risky. Most species had grown used to watching from a distance. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for only a short time. Other species knew humans as traders and engineers, not conquerors. They knew Earth was a death world, heavy with gravity, storms, disease, and predators, but they believed humans had softened after leaving their home planet. Many thought humans had learned to be careful and polite like everyone else. Captain Tae-Soo Han stood in the command room of the Terran, fleet carrier Resolute. He watched the SOS replay on the main screen. The alien face froze again, mouth open in a silent scream before the signal cut out. The room was quiet. No one spoke. Dayun Park, the fleet strategist, broke the silence first. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were hard. She explained that the colony belonged to no major power. Helping them would bring trouble. A large alliance fleet was already involved. The Galactic Council had sent a warning. Humanity was advised not to interfere. Tae-Soo listened without interrupting. He had seen messages like this before, even back on Earth. Different faces, same fear. When Dayun finished, he looked around the room. Engineer Serin Choi stood near a console, grease still on her hands from working below deck. Gin Wukong, leader of the boarding teams, leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Medik Yuna Lee sat quietly, hands folded, eyes lowered. Tae-Soo spoke in a steady voice. He said the signal had reached Earth. That meant it was now their problem. He said no one had asked who was strong enough to help, only who was willing. He ordered the fleet to prepare for immediate departure. No one argued. They had expected the decision. As Terran ships powered up, alarms echoed through docking stations. Crews moved fast, but without panic. This was what they trained for. Humanity did not build ships for comfort. They built them to survive failure. Thick armor plates locked into place. Weapon systems warmed. Medical bays prepared for mass casualties. Far away at the Galactic Council station, observers noticed the movement. Human ships were leaving their territory in force. Council members began to speak at once. Some were confused. Others were afraid. A human representative was contacted and urged to stop the fleet. This was not humanity's fight. Negotiations were still possible. The message reached Tae-Soo while the Resolute was already in transit. He did not answer personally. Dayun sent a short reply. Humanity acknowledged the warning. Humanity was still moving. As the fleet traveled through jump space, tension grew. Jinwoo checked his team's gear again and again. They were trained for extreme gravity, toxic air, and close combat. Alien ships were often lighter and fragile. Boarding them would be dangerous. But humans were used to danger. Yuna walked through the medical bay, securing equipment and speaking softly to her staff. Many of the species they might treat had different blood, organs, and needs. Human doctors studied everything. They believed that saving one life was worth the effort, even if the patient was not human. When the fleet dropped out of jump space, the system ahead was filled with smoke and fire. Broken stations drifted in silence. Small ships fled in every direction. The human sensors painted a clear picture. A powerful Alliance fleet controlled the area. Their ships were sleek and bright. Symbols of authority and fear, refugee vessels moved without pattern, damaged and overloaded. Many were moments from destruction. Tae-Soo ordered immediate action. Human ships spread out, forming a protective barrier. Rescue shuttles launched without waiting for permission. The Alliance fleet sent a message soon after. The tone was mocking. They demanded the humans leave at once. This was an internal matter. Resistance would be met with force. Taesu watched the message end. He did not reply. Instead, he ordered all ships to lock defensive positions around the refugees. Weapons were armed, but no shots were fired yet. From a distance, alien commanders laughed. The human fleet was small compared to theirs. Human ships were ugly and heavy, with no decorative lights or graceful curves. They looked like tools, not symbols of power. The first shot did not come from humanity. A bright beam struck one of the Terran escort ships. The impact shook the Resolute. Warning lights flashed. The damaged ship slowed, but did not fall back. Its engines burned harder, pushing it forward into position. Taesu gave the order. Human weapons spoke with deep thunder-like force. They did not glow or sing. They hit. Alliance ships lost shields, then hull. One cruiser broke apart in seconds. Another spun out of control. The battlefield changed fast. What had seemed like an easy victory became chaos. Human ships advanced under fire, absorbing damage that would have destroyed other fleets. Serene worked non-stop, rerouting power, sealing breaches, keeping systems alive beyond safe limits. Ginwoo led the first boarding team. Their shuttle slammed into an enemy ship with brutal force. The hatch blew open. Gravity inside was weak, air thin. The humans moved like storms, fast and focused. They disabled weapons, freed prisoners, and secured control rooms. The Alliance commanders tried to regroup, but fear spread. These humans did not fight for conquest. They fought like rescuers who had decided to become executioners. On the refugee ships, aliens watched in disbelief. They had expected abandonment. Instead, Deathworlders stood between them and destruction. Some cried, some prayed. All remembered. The battle did not end quickly, but the result became clear. The Alliance fleet began to retreat, leaving wreckage behind. Human ships did not chase far. Their priority was the living. As the last enemy ship fled, Taesu allowed himself one deep breath. The system was silent again, broken but safe for now. Across the galaxy, recordings of the battle spread. Analysts replayed the footage again and again. One truth became impossible to ignore. Humanity had answered an SOS. And by doing so, humanity had declared war. The Terran fleet moved cautiously through the debris field of the destroyed Alliance ships. Smoke and fire drifted in space, lighting up shattered holes that glimmered under the starlight. Captain Taesu Han stood on the bridge of the Resolute, staring at the broken remnants. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down, not just for the refugees, but for every human and alien soul watching them. Dayun Park, standing nearby, studied the tactical displays. Her mind raced with calculations. The fleet was strong, but the enemy was large. Reinforcements could arrive at any moment. She suggested a careful approach, using speed and precision to rescue civilians without engaging unnecessarily. Taesu nodded. Humans were not reckless, but they were unyielding when lives were at stake. Below deck, Engineer Saren Choi monitored the power conduits and life support systems. Sparks flew from damaged panels, but she remained calm, directing her team with quiet authority. "We need to keep these ships operational," she said. "Every life depends on it." Gin Wukong prepared his boarding team for another mission. Their target was a large transport vessel trapped under a broken space station. Inside, families and workers were waiting, terrified and hungry. Jinwoo moved with steady confidence, checking weapons, oxygen tanks, and communication devices. Each member of the team knew their roles, trained for years to operate in deadly conditions. Yuna Lee, the medic, organized supplies for immediate treatment. Alien physiology varied widely, and she had studied countless species. Her calm presence reassured the rescued civilians, even if they could not understand her language. She had seen fear many times, and she knew how to respond with gentle words and steady hands. The fleet approached the trapped transport. Alliance patrols still lingered in the area, watching for human ships. Taesu gave the order to proceed quietly, but prepared for confrontation. Terran ships moved like shadows, careful but determined. Jinwoo's team launched in their shuttle. The station loomed above them, a jagged mass of broken metal and spinning debris. The shuttle weaved through the gaps, engines straining against the pull of gravity simulators left active in the station. They docked with the transport, and hatches opened. Inside, the situation was worse than anyone expected. The transport was overcrowded, air barely breathable. Children clung to their parents. Elderly beings struggled to move. Fear was everywhere. Jinwoo signaled his team to spread out. They carried injured to the shuttle, while others cleared debris and secured the exits. Every action was fast, precise, and careful. The alarm went off. Alliance patrols had noticed movement. They fired warning shots. The shuttle shook. Jinwoo adjusted shields and continued. His team fought through panic, confusion, and fear. Their training was relentless, their will stronger. One by one, they secured the civilians and loaded them safely. Back on the resolute Tace, Su monitored the progress. He knew the enemy, I'd respond soon. The Terran fleet could not hide forever. He ordered escort ships to take defensive positions, forming a protective barrier around the transport shuttles. Humans did not retreat. They advanced slowly, covering every inch of space. The first exchange of fire came without warning. Alliance ships attacked, confident in their numbers. They aimed at the shuttles carrying the civilians. Terran ships responded immediately. Their weapons were powerful, simple, and effective. Strikes hit precisely, disabling enemy engines and cutting through shields. One cruiser exploded, sending debris in all directions. Human ships moved forward, protecting the shuttles like walls of living steel. The refugees watched in amazement. They had expected humans to run, to negotiate, or to surrender. Instead, they saw ships taking direct hits and continuing. Boarding teams moving through the chaos, rescuing them without hesitation. Fear mixed with hope. Do-yoon Park coordinated the fleet's maneuvers. She ordered flanking movements and protective zones. The humans did not overwhelm with numbers, but with tactics, using the environment, debris, and the enemy's own momentum against them. Alien analysts watching from afar could not understand. Humans acted unpredictably, with purpose, but no arrogance. Jinwoo's team finished clearing the transport. Injured were stabilized, families reunited, and the vessel prepared to leave the danger zone. The shuttle detached from the station, moving through the debris field under constant threat of attack. Alliance fighters pursued, but Terran escorts engaged them. Skirmishes erupted across the field, small but deadly. The humans fought with determination and strategy, using precise strikes instead of brute force alone. Yuna treated injuries as they arrived. She worked tirelessly, calming frightened beings, cleaning wounds, and preparing them for the journey ahead. The medical bays were filled with chaos, but her calm voice and firm hands made everything manageable. The rescued aliens whispered thanks in languages she could not understand. But her smile was enough. Saren Choi rerouted power to shields and engines, keeping shuttles operational under constant strain. Sparks flew and alarms rang, but she did not stop. Every system was under stress, yet she kept the fleet moving forward. Her quiet confidence inspired the engineers around her as the transports moved toward safety. Tae-soo ordered the fleet to engage in a controlled offensive. They could not allow the enemy to regroup. Human ships attacked in patterns that were confusing to the Alliance fleet. One human vessel would draw attention, while another struck a weak point. Explosions lit the void, creating a display of controlled destruction. The Alliance fleet began to retreat, but humans pressed forward. They were not reckless. Each strike was calculated to neutralize threats, protect civilians, and conserve strength. Alien observers began to whisper. The humans did not fight for glory or conquest. They fought for life. The rescue operation continued through the night cycle of the system. The Terran fleet moved with a balance of caution and aggression. Boarding teams cleared abandoned stations, securing supplies and rescuing hidden survivors. Civilians began to understand that humans were different. They did not seek tribute, power, or loyalty. They offered safety, protection, and action. June Park communicated with the Galactic Council, explaining the human strategy and intentions. The Council listened, conflicted and uneasy. Some believed humans had overstepped. Others were silent, realizing that any future aggression against civilians would now trigger an unprecedented response. The rescued refugees began to form small communities aboard transports and stations. They shared stories of the horrors they had faced, and the humans listened. Tesu made it clear that every life mattered, and no one would be left behind. Discipline and compassion moved together. The Alliance fleet regrouped in a distant sector, planning their next move. They believed numbers alone could challenge humans. They underestimated the resilience, skill, and moral resolve of the Deathworlders. Humans had learned from a harsh home where survival demanded intelligence, endurance, decisiveness. The Terran fleet continued its mission, rescuing, protecting, and securing civilians. Each action was noted, each move calculated. Humanity was not just responding to a call. They were redefining what it meant to act in a galaxy that often chose inaction. Throughout the fleet, small moments of humanity persisted. Soldiers sang quietly in the barracks to calm nerves. Engineers told jokes while fixing systems under stress. Medics shared food with rescued children. Even in the middle of chaos, compassion remained as the sun rose over the distant system. The Terran fleet completed the first phase of the operation. Hundreds of lives were saved. Dozens of enemy ships were disabled. Human ships showed no sign of slowing down. The message to the galaxy was clear. Humanity would answer the call of the desperate. Regardless of risk or warning, Tesuhan looked out at the stars. Feeling the weight of the responsibility, but also the strength of his crew, they were not the strongest in numbers, but they were relentless, resourceful, and brave. And in the darkness of space, their presence became a beacon of hope. The battle for the system was over. But the war of perception had just begun. The galaxy now watched closely. Humans were not what many had assumed. They were not negotiators or diplomats in the traditional sense. They were protectors. They would not turn away from suffering. As transports moved toward safer sectors, civilians whispered among themselves. Tales of humans who walked through fire, who carried the wounded without pause, who fought with skill and care, spread quickly. Fear began to shift to admiration. Stories of bravery and compassion traveled faster than the fleet could move. Dayun, Park, and Tesuhan coordinated the next steps. Reinforcements were prepared, escape routes planned, and defensive perimeters established. The fleet was ready for whatever came next. Every crew member knew that their purpose was clear: protect lives, not territories. The galaxy slowly began to understand. The SOS had not only been answered, humanity had made a statement. Those who threatened the innocent would face consequences they could not imagine. Humans had become a force that combined strategy, skill, and morality. And the echoes of their actions would reach every corner of known space. The Terran fleet moved steadily through the aftermath of the battle. Debris floated in silence. But the danger was not gone. Alliance scouts were still present, hiding among fragments of shattered ships, waiting for a chance to strike. Captain Tesuhan stood on the bridge of the Resolute, eyes sharp and thoughtful. The safety of the rescued civilians depended on their next decisions. Dayun Park monitored the tactical displays. Patterns of enemy movement were subtle but detectable. She suggested sending small strike teams to disable isolated ships before they could regroup. Tezu agreed, understanding the balance between offense and defense. They could not risk another surprise attack, but they also could not allow the Alliance to rebuild in the area. Engineer Saren Choi worked tirelessly with her team. Some of the ships were damaged in ways that could fail at any moment. Systems flickered, power fluctuated, but she kept them operational. Every crew member depended on her, and she did not fail. Sparks flew, panels hummed. She directed repairs with quiet authority. Jin Wukong prepared his boarding teams for another mission. Their target this time was a large cruiser that had been heavily damaged but still posed a threat. Boarding it meant navigating through broken corridors, broken gravity simulators, and traps left behind by fleeing enemies. Ginwoo went over the plans with each team member, reminding them to protect civilians first, neutralize threats second. Unilee prepared medical stations aboard the shuttle transports. Injuries from the previous skirmishes were still being treated, but she also had to be ready for the next engagement. She organized supplies, reassured frightened survivors, and monitored the stress of her own team. Calmness and focus were essential. Panic could spread faster than any weapon. The human fleet moved toward the isolated cruiser. Alliance ships watched from a distance, unsure of human intentions. The humans approached slowly, deliberately. They did not rush blindly. Taesu knew that precision and timing would decide the outcome. Jinwoo's boarding shuttle detached from the main fleet. It moved quietly, weaving between debris, cloaked under the shadows of shattered ships. Inside, the boarding team checked weapons, oxygen, and communication channels. Each member knew the stakes. They were trained for extreme gravity, fire, and close-quarters combat. But this mission would test them in new ways. The shuttle docked with the cruiser. Hatches opened. The team entered silently. Broken hallways stretched ahead, filled with smoke, sparks, and abandoned equipment. The boarding team moved carefully, checking each room before advancing. They found wounded enemy soldiers, some hiding in fear, others in pain. Ginwoo reminded his team, no unnecessary violence. They were here to stop threats, not to punish the weak. Suddenly, a hidden turret fired. One of the team members was hit, but quickly stabilized by another teammate. The firefight was controlled, efficient, and focused. The humans neutralized the weapon and moved forward. More turrets were disabled in a similar way, and the cruiser's main systems were secured. Meanwhile, back at the Resolute, Tace coordinated with the fleet. He ordered defensive positions around the bow. Arding shuttle. Terran ships moved in synchronized patterns, creating barriers between the shuttle and any potential enemy reinforcements. Alien observers could not understand the efficiency. Humans did not scatter or panic. They used their numbers intelligently, their strategy precise. The boarding team reached the command center of the cruiser. The enemy command crew had barricaded themselves, but they were outmatched. Ginwoo negotiated surrender, offering safe passage to those who laid down arms. Some resisted, and they were carefully restrained. Others surrendered immediately, relieved that they would not be harmed. The humans treated captives humanely. Even as the enemy fleet watched in confusion and disbelief, Unilee and a medical squad entered the cruiser. Shortly after the boarding team, they tended to the wounded, human and alien alike. She worked quickly, calm under pressure, saving lives even as alarms continued to ring. Injured civilians and enemy soldiers alike were treated with the same care. Compassion was a weapon humans wielded as effectively as their ships. Gun Serene Choi rerouted the cruiser's power systems. Broken connections were repaired, engines stabilized, and shields temporarily restored. The ship, now under human control, was ready to join the fleet and evacuate civilians from other threatened areas. Every action was coordinated to minimize risk and maximize survival. Back on the transports, rescued civilians began to understand the humans' purpose. They were not conquerors. They did not seek tribute or loyalty. They were protectors. Stories began to spread among the refugees, humans walking through fire, carrying the injured, fighting without hesitation. Fear slowly turned into awe and trust. The Alliance fleet regrouped again, more cautious this time. They attempted a counterattack, but Terran ships were ready. Defensive formations absorbed the first wave, targeting enemy leaders and critical systems. Every attack was met with precision. Civilians remained protected behind shields and escort ships. Dayun Park guided the fleet's movements. She predicted enemy reactions, planned flanking maneuvers, and coordinated with boarding teams. The humans' efficiency was remarkable. They did not fight recklessly, yet every strike was decisive. The enemy could not anticipate their next move. Throughout the fleet, moments of humanity persisted. Soldiers checked on each other, shared stories, and offered comfort. Engineers and medics worked side by side, repairing and healing under stress. Even in the chaos of battle, compassion was maintained. It was part of what made the humans different. Ginwu's team secured the last section of the cruiser. Civilians were loaded onto transports, and remaining threats neutralized. The shuttle detached safely, rejoining the main fleet. Human ships moved forward, ready for the next challenge. They did not celebrate. There was no time for pride. The mission was ongoing, and the galaxy was watching. Taesu communicated with the Galactic Council again. He explained the actions, intentions, and results. There was no arrogance, only clarity. Humans would protect civilians, respond to threats, and act decisively. They would not negotiate with attackers or tolerate cruelty. The message was received with tension, awe, and fear. The fleet moved toward other vulnerable systems. Small stations, transports, and colonies were still at risk. Humans would not ignore a call for help. Their presence alone changed the dynamic of the galaxy. Civilian ships followed the Terran fleet with cautious hope, learning that the humans were more than warriors. They were guardians. The rescued civilians began forming small communities aboard transports and stations. They shared experiences, told stories, and slowly rebuilt trust. Children laughed quietly as adults whispered tales of human courage. The humans listened, guided, and protected. Every life mattered. The Alliance fleet, now wary and cautious, attempted to negotiate through intermediaries. But the humans refused any compromise that endangered civilians. Their message was simple: do not attack the helpless. Protecting the innocent was not optional. It was law. As night fell over the distant star system, the Terran fleet prepared for rest and repairs. Shuttles moved supplies, medics treated injuries, and engineers maintained systems. The calm was temporary, a pause in the ongoing struggle. Taesu walked the decks, observing the crew and rescued civilians. He felt pride, but also responsibility. Every decision, every action carried weight. Humans had demonstrated strength, skill, and moral resolve. They had faced a superior enemy and protected the vulnerable without compromise. The galaxy had begun to take notice. Alliances shifted, neutral worlds watched, and stories of courage spread faster than any fleet could travel. Jinwu's team returned to the Resolute. They were exhausted, but their eyes held determination. They had succeeded in their mission. They had saved lives, neutralized threats, and set an example. Every member knew that more challenges awaited. They were ready. Yunali continued her work, treating the last of the injured. She spoke gently to frightened children, calmed parents, and ensured that every survivor felt safe. Compassion was not weakness. It was part of the human way. Saren Choi monitored systems throughout the fleet, ensuring readiness for the next engagement. Sparks and alarms were constant, but her calm focus kept everything operational. Engineers and crew trusted her implicitly. Dayun Park continued planning, analyzing, and predicting enemy movements. Her mind was sharp, precise, and tireless. She coordinated the fleet with strategy and foresight. Human tactics were a combination of planning and adaptability, honed by years on a harsh homeworld. Taesuhan watched the fleet from the bridge. He knew the mission was far from over. The SOS had been answered, but the galaxy had not yet fully understood humanity's power, determination, and moral code. He knew that each action sent ripples through space, affecting allies and enemies alike. The rescued civilians whispered among themselves. They told stories of humans who moved through fire, who carried the injured, who fought without hesitation. Fear turned to trust. Trust turned to hope. The Terran fleet was not just a military force. It was a symbol, a beacon of protection. Humanity had acted decisively. They had rescued, fought, and protected. And in doing so, they had begun to reshape the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to answer a call for help. The battle was not only against an enemy fleet, it was against fear, apathy, and indifference. The fleet prepared for the next system, next threat, and the next challenge. Every crew member, every civilian, every rescued life was part of the mission. Humanity had stepped into the galaxy not as conquerors, but as guardians. and the galaxy was beginning to understand that calling for help meant calling for humans. The Terran fleet had moved further into the system, following scattered signals of distress. Smoke and fire still drifted among broken stations and debris. But civilians continued to survive thanks to the fleet's protection. Captain Tae-Soo Han watched the sensors carefully, noting movement patterns and potential threats. Every signal mattered. Every life counted. Daeun Park analyzed the tactical displays, predicting where stranded civilians might be hiding. Some were trapped on small moons, others in damaged stations with broken communication systems. The humans had no illusions about the scale of the challenge. They were not there to win glory. They were there to save lives. Engineer Saren Choi coordinated repairs across multiple ships. Systems strained, engines faltered, and weapons needed maintenance. Sparks flew, alarms rang, but her calm voice guided the teams. Each ship remained operational despite damage. It's a testament to human engineering and endurance. Gin Wukong prepared boarding teams for another mission. They would enter a massive space station partially destroyed in earlier skirmishes. Inside, families hid in damaged corridors, afraid of both humans and enemies. Jin Woo's team went over the plan. Protect civilians first, neutralize threats second. Every member knew the mission required courage, skill, and compassion. Yuna Lee organized medical aid. She prepared for injuries both expected and unexpected. Children and elders often suffered most. Her team set up triage zones and moved quickly to assist any who needed help. Calm and methodical, she ensured that no one was ignored. The fleet approached the station carefully. Alliance scouts hovered nearby, but human ships held defensive positions, forming a protective perimeter. Tae-Soo gave the order to advance slowly, keeping civilians and ships safe while preparing for potential engagement. Jin Woo's shuttle moved into the station, navigating broken corridors and flickering lights. Inside, the team found civilians hiding in small rooms. Families clutched each other, fear evident in every movement. Jin Woo spoke softly through translation devices, reassuring them. The team carried the wounded and guided others toward safe zones. Suddenly, automated defenses activated. Lasers flashed, forcing the team to move quickly. One team member was hit, but stabilized by a teammate. Every action was precise, minimizing risk to civilians. The team neutralized the defenses systematically, moving forward without hesitation. Back on the Resolute, Tae-Soo coordinated fleet maneuvers. Escort ships covered vulnerable points, scanning for enemy movement. The humans' approach was methodical, using both strategy and speed to protect civilians. Alien observers struggled to understand the efficiency. Humans did not act recklessly, yet their actions were decisive. The boarding team reached the central control area of the station. The remaining defenders were confused and fearful. Ginwoo offered surrender. Some resisted, but they were quickly subdued without unnecessary violence. The humans treated all captives with fairness and care. Reinforcing the idea that they fought for life, not revenge, Yuna Lee entered the station with medical supplies. She treated the injured, offering reassurance and comfort. Her calm presence steadied frightened civilians, who began to trust the humans completely. Every life saved strengthened the morale of both crew and survivors. Saren Choi repaired the station's essential systems. Oxygen levels stabilized, power restored to critical areas, and damaged equipment made functional. The station, now under human control, became a hub for the rescue operation. Civilians were safe, and additional survivors could be brought in efficiently. The Alliance fleet, observing from a distance, attempted to regroup. They launched a small counterattack, but human ships were ready. Defensive formations absorbed the initial strikes, while offensive units targeted key systems on enemy vessels. Precision and coordination made every attack effective. Civilians remained protected behind shields and escort ships. Daeun Park adjusted fleet maneuvers constantly. She anticipated enemy reactions, coordinated boarding teams, and ensured civilian safety. The humans' tactics were both flexible and precise. Combining strategy, training, and experience gained from a harsh homeworld, throughout the fleet, small moments of humanity persisted. Soldiers supported one another, engineers exchanged encouragement, and medics comforted survivors. Compassion was part of their operational strength. Instilling confidence in both crew and civilians, Jinwoo's team completed the clearance of the station. Civilians were loaded onto transports and moved to safety. Remaining threats were neutralized. The shuttle detached and returned to the fleet. Human ships advanced methodically, remaining alert and protective. There was no celebration. The mission continued as the galaxy watched closely. Taesu sent updates to the Galactic Council, explaining actions, intentions, and results. He spoke plainly, without arrogance or threat. Humans would protect the vulnerable, act decisively, and respond to cruelty with force. The Council listened, some in awe, others in fear. The message was simple: harming civilians would have consequences. The fleet continued the rescue operation in neighboring sectors. Small stations, damaged transport ships, and stranded colonies were next. Humans did not ignore distress. They moved efficiently, saving lives and protecting those in need. Civilians began to understand that humans were not aggressors, but guardians. Among the rescued, stories of human bravery spread. Children laughed as adults whispered tales of humans moving through fire, carrying the injured, and facing danger without hesitation. Fear turned to trust, trust to hope. The Terran fleet became a symbol of protection and reliability. Dayun Park and Taesuhan coordinated the next phase. Reinforcements were prepared, routes mapped, and defensive perimeters reinforced. Every crew member understood the mission: protect life, maintain discipline, and act with purpose. Humanity had demonstrated strength, skill, and moral resolve. The Alliance fleet, cautious now, attempted negotiations. But humans refused any compromise that endangered civilians. Their message was clear and unwavering: do not attack the helpless. Protecting the innocent was a duty, not an option. As night fell over the system, the Terran fleet paused for repairs and resupply. Shuttles moved supplies, medics treated injuries, and engineers maintained vital systems. Calmness returned, if only temporarily, before the next wave of operations. Taesu walked the decks, observing his crew and the rescued civilians. He felt pride, but also responsibility. Every decision, every action carried weight. Humans had saved lives, fought effectively, and maintained compassion. They had faced a superior enemy, protected the vulnerable, and demonstrated moral authority. The galaxy took notice. Alliances shifted, neutral worlds observed. Stories of human courage spread faster than any fleet could travel. Jinwoo's team returned to the Resolute, exhausted but resolute. They had succeeded in saving lives, neutralizing threats, and demonstrating human capability. Yuna Lee continued her medical work, calming children, assisting adults, and treating all who needed care. Saren Choi maintained fleet systems, ensuring operational readiness. Her calm, focus, and expertise were vital. Dayun Park planned and adjusted strategy, coordinating the fleet with foresight and precision. Every action reinforced the humans' reputation as disciplined and moral warriors. Taesuhan looked out at the stars. The mission was far from over, but humanity's actions had begun to change perceptions. The SOS had been answered decisively, and the galaxy began to see humans as protectors rather than negotiators or diplomats. Stories of courage, compassion, and relentless resolve spread across systems, inspiring hope and caution alike. The fleet prepared for the next challenges, with every crew member, civilian, and rescued life part of the mission. Humanity had stepped into the galaxy not as conquerors, but as guardians. And the galaxy was beginning to understand that calling for help meant calling for humans, who would respond with force, strategy, and unwavering protection. The Terran fleet had settled into a rhythm of rescue and protection, but the Alliance was not idle. Reports came in of a massive counterattack, hundreds of ships moving toward the systems the humans were protecting. The Galactic Council warned again, urging humans to withdraw and negotiate. Captain Taesuhan stood on the bridge of the Resolute, listening, but his eyes were steady. He would not abandon civilians. Da-Yoon Park studied the tactical displays, analyzing enemy formations and possible strategies. The Alliance fleet was large and well-equipped, but they lacked human understanding of life and death urgency. Da-Yoon advised a balanced response. Protect civilians first, strike strategically second. Tae-Soo nodded. Every decision carried weight. But the mission was clear. No civilian could be left unprotected. Engineer Serin Choi moved through the ship, inspecting critical systems. Weapons, engines, shields all required constant attention. Sparks and alarms were normal, but she kept everything operational. The fleet depended on her. She moved with quiet determination, her team following her instructions without hesitation. Jin Wukong prepared boarding teams for offensive operations. The new mission required them to disable key Alliance ships before they could reach the civilians. His team checked weapons, oxygen, and communication equipment. Each member knew the risks and the importance of precision. This was not a battle for glory. It was a battle for life. Yoona Lee organized medical stations. The possibility of heavy casualties weighed on her, but she remained calm. Supplies were prepared, triage areas ready, and personnel assigned. Her calm voice reassured the crew and civilians alike. Panic would only endanger lives, and she refused to allow it. The enemy fleet arrived, vast and imposing. Hundreds of ships moved in formation, confident in numbers and technology. They assumed the humans would retreat or negotiate. Instead, Terran ships moved into defensive positions, forming shields around transports and vulnerable targets. Humans did not panic. They used tactics honed on a death world, combining speed, endurance, and strategy. The first exchange of fire was swift. Alliance ships fired, aiming to break through the defensive lines. Human weapons responded with precision, disabling engines, shields, and critical systems. One by one, enemy ships fell, unable to counter the humans' calculated attacks. Civilians remained protected behind the shielded formation. Jinwoo's boarding teams deployed in shuttles, targeting isolated enemy vessels. Boarding was dangerous, navigating damaged corridors, weak gravity, and potential traps. Teams moved silently, neutralizing threats and rescuing prisoners. Every action was measured, precise, and efficient. The humans fought with skill, courage, and control. Serin Choi maintained the fleet's operational integrity, rerouting power to critical systems under fire. Shields held, engines ran, weapons remained functional. Sparks and alarms were constant. But her calm determination ensured no ship failed under pressure. Yoona Lee treated the injured, both human and alien. Casualties from the skirmishes were attended to immediately. Children and elders were stabilized and fear was soothed by her presence. Compassion remained a constant, even in the chaos of battle. Da-Yoon Park coordinated fleet maneuvers. She predicted enemy movements, arranged flanking attacks, and ensured civilians remained safe. Humans did not overwhelm with numbers, but used efficiency, strategy, and precision to control the battlefield. Enemy commanders struggled to understand, unable to predict human tactics. The boarding teams reached enemy command centers, securing ships from within. Surrender was offered and accepted by those who wished it. Resistors were restrained carefully. Civilians were prioritized above all. The humans demonstrated that their battle was not for conquest, but for protection and survival. Back on the transports, rescued civilians witnessed human bravery firsthand. Stories spread quickly. Humans walking through fire, carrying the injured, fighting without hesitation. Fear gave way to trust. Trust gave way to hope. The Terran fleet had become a symbol of protection. The Alliance attempted coordinated strikes, but the humans anticipated and countered each move. Defensive formations absorbed attacks while offensive units targeted key enemy systems. Every strike was precise. Minimizing risk to civilians and maximizing impact on enemy vessels, Tae-Soo monitored the engagement from the bridge. He communicated with his fleet, issuing orders calmly and decisively. Every maneuver was calculated, every decision weighed. The humans were not reckless. They moved with the precision of those who had survived harsh worlds and impossible odds. Throughout the fleet, small acts of humanity persisted. Soldiers supported each other. Engineers encouraged teammates. Medics comforted the injured. Even amid chaos, compassion was maintained. The humans' moral resolve became part of their strength, inspiring both crew and civilians. The battle continued through cycles of light and dark in the system. Enemy ships fell one by one, unable to match human coordination and determination. Boarding teams completed their missions, rescuing captives, securing ships, and disabling enemy firepower. Each success further cemented the humans' reputation. Dayun Park adjusted strategies in real time, coordinating with boarding teams and defensive units. Her mind worked tirelessly, predicting enemy reactions and ensuring civilians remained protected. Every human ship acted with purpose. Every movement calculated to maintain control over the battlefield. Ginwu's teams returned with survivors. Shuttles filled with civilians and prisoners. Human ships advanced to cover vulnerable zones. No one celebrated. The mission continued. Civilians were safe, but threats remained. Unilee continued her work tirelessly, treating injuries and calming the frightened. Her voice and presence brought reassurance. Each life saved reinforced the crew's determination and the civilians. Trust in the humans. Saren Choi maintained power and systems, keeping ships operational under extreme stress. Her focus allowed weapons to function, shields to hold, and engines to operate beyond standard limits. The fleet could continue fighting without faltering. Taesu addressed the Galactic Council. His message was clear. Humans would not withdraw. They would protect civilians, respond to threats, and act decisively. Any harm to innocent lives would be met with calculated retaliation. The Council understood. Fear, awe, and respect spread through their ranks. The fleet prepared for the next phase of operations. More systems required rescue. More civilians needed protection. Humans moved with efficiency and purpose, reinforcing their role as guardians of life. Every crew member, every rescued civilian, every success in battle strengthened the fleet's reputation. Stories of human courage spread rapidly. Tales of bravery, compassion, and relentless resolve reached neighboring systems. Fear turned to respect, caution turned to admiration. Humans were no longer just traders or Deathworld survivors. They were protectors, a force that would respond to any call for help. The Terran fleet paused briefly to repair, resupply, and reorganize. Shuttles moved resources, medics treated injuries, and engineers ensured operational readiness. Calmness was temporary, a momentary pause before the next engagement. Taesu-han walked the decks, observing the crew and civilians. Pride and responsibility weighed on him equally. Every decision, every action, shaped the perception of humanity in the galaxy. The SOS had been answered decisively, and the humans' moral and tactical code was clear to all. The Alliance fleet, now cautious and hesitant, reconsidered their approach. They had underestimated humans, who combined skill, strategy, endurance, and moral resolve. The humans' message was clear: harming civilians would have consequences, and humanity would act without hesitation to protect life. The fleet prepared for continued operations. Every crew member, every rescued civilian, and every strategic decision was part of a larger mission. Humans had stepped into the galaxy not as conquerors, but as guardians. Their actions sent ripples across space, showing that calling for help meant calling for humans, who would respond with force, strategy, and unwavering protection. The Terran fleet had gained a reputation across the sector. Messages of human courage and precision spread quickly, and the Alliance was beginning to realize the cost of underestimating them. Captain Taesu-han observed the fleet from the bridge of the Resolute, his expression calm but focused. The next engagement would test everything: strategy, endurance, and human resolve. Dayun Park studied enemy formations on the tactical display. The Alliance fleet was larger and better equipped than any single human squadron, but they lacked understanding of human determination. She coordinated with boarding teams and defensive units, predicting movements, planning flanks, and prioritizing civilian safety above all. Engineer Saren Choi moved through the ships, inspecting every critical system. Sparks flew, consoles hummed, and alarms rang constantly. She guided her team through repairs, ensuring weapons, shields, and engines remained operational under immense stress. Every ship depended on her focus. She did not falter. Jin Wukong prepared boarding teams for a decisive operation, capturing the enemy command station. The station had strategic control over the fleet's movements, and neutralizing it could break the alliance's coordination. The boarding team reviewed maps, discussed potential hazards, and checked equipment meticulously. Success depended on precision, skill, and careful timing. Yuna Lee organized medical support for both civilians and soldiers. Casualties were expected, and her team was ready. She prepared triage areas, stocked supplies, and coordinated with engineers to ensure that systems for life support and treatment were fully functional. Her calm voice reassured everyone, preventing panic. The enemy fleet approached with confidence, assuming the humans would be overwhelmed by numbers. Instead, the Terran ships held defensive positions, forming barriers around transports and civilians. Humans did not panic. They moved strategically, combining experience, endurance, and precise execution learned from a harsh homeworld. The first clash was sudden and brutal. Alliance ships fired, aiming for the humans' protective lines. Human weapons responded with precision. One cruiser disabled the engines of 3 enemy ships simultaneously. A transport was shielded from fire, and civilians remained safe. Strategic strikes broke enemy formations. Turning the tide slowly in favor of the humans, Jin Woo's teams boarded enemy vessels, moving with speed and precision. Broken corridors, malfunctioning gravity systems, and automated defenses were obstacles, but they proceeded systematically. Civilians and prisoners were secured and moved to safety. Resistance was neutralized efficiently, without unnecessary harm. Saren Choi managed the fleet systems under pressure. Shields held, engines ran, and weapons remained functional. Sparks and alarms filled the rooms, but she moved calmly from station to station, ensuring every ship could continue fighting. The fleet's efficiency was a result of her leadership and skill. Yuna Lee treated the injured as they were brought aboard shuttles. Soldiers and civilians alike received care. Children clutched her hands while elders whispered gratitude. Calm, steady, and thorough. She ensured no one was left behind. Dayun Park adjusted fleet formations, anticipating enemy maneuvers. Offensive and defensive units were balanced to protect civilians while engaging threats. Flanking strategies and calculated strikes allowed humans to control the battlefield. Alien commanders struggled to predict human behavior. Misjudging their resolve, the boarding teams reached the enemy command station. Defenders were barricaded, but the humans offered surrender first. Some resisted, but were subdued carefully. The station was taken with minimal loss of life. Civilians and prisoners were prioritized, reinforcing humanity's moral code. Every action sent a message. Humans fought for life, not domination. Across the galaxy, systems began to realize the implications. Humanity's actions changed the perception of power. Neutral worlds observed humans with caution and respect. They understood that any threat to the innocent could trigger a decisive human response. The SOS that began this campaign had become a catalyst for broader change. Back on the transports, rescued civilians began to organize small communities. Families shared stories, comforted one another, and spread tales of human bravery. Children laughed quietly, while adults whispered, describing humans who walked through fire, carried the wounded, and fought without hesitation. Fear transformed into hope, and hope into trust. Tae-Soo-Han maintained communication with the Galactic Council. His message was clear: humans would not withdraw. They would protect the helpless, respond decisively to threats, and act without hesitation when morality demanded it. The Council understood the weight of these words. Respect, caution, and awe spread among observers. The fleet moved toward new sectors, responding to additional SOS signals. Small stations, damaged transport vessels, and isolated colonies required rescue. Humans operated with efficiency and purpose. Every life saved reinforced their reputation as protectors, not conquerors. Jinwoo's boarding teams continued to operate with precision. Each successful mission strengthened the fleet's effectiveness, secured more civilians, and dismantled enemy capabilities. The humans' skill and resolve were unmatched in the sector. The Alliance began to hesitate, unsure of how to respond to a force that combined skill, strategy, endurance, and moral responsibility. Serin Choi maintained operational readiness across the fleet. Systems ran at peak efficiency, even under sustained stress. Weapons, shields, and engines functioned flawlessly. The fleet could continue operations indefinitely, limited only by crew endurance and supplies. Yunali's calm presence reassured the rescued civilians and injured crew. Her team provided care, guidance, and stability. Compassion, coupled with effectiveness, reinforced the humans' unique approach to warfare and protection. Da-Yun Park coordinated fleet strategy in real time. She adjusted formations, predicted enemy movements, and ensured civilians remained safe. Precision and flexibility defined human tactics. Every action was measured, effective, and morally grounded. Tae-Soo-han observed the battle and the rescue operations from the bridge. He understood the weight of their actions. Humanity had answered the SOS decisively. Their courage, skill, and moral clarity sent ripples across the galaxy. Neutral worlds reconsidered alliances, potential enemies recalculated strategies, and stories of human protection spread faster than fleets could travel. The boarding teams returned with civilians and prisoners. Transport shuttles moved safely under protective human shields. Each success reinforced the message: humans acted to protect, not to conquer. The galaxy slowly absorbed this reality. Throughout the fleet, humans remained disciplined and compassionate. Soldiers supported each other, engineers repaired under pressure, and medics treated the injured with care. Every member of the crew understood that their mission was not only about survival, but about demonstrating humanity's moral code and commitment to life. The Terran fleet paused briefly to resupply, repair, and reorganize. Shuttles transported resources, medical teams treated injuries, and engineers ensured operational readiness. The calm was temporary, but necessary. Tae-Soo-han walked the decks, observing his crew and civilians. Pride and responsibility weighed equally. Every decision, every action, shaped the perception of humanity in the galaxy. The Alliance fleet, cautious and uncertain, began to reconsider strategies. They had underestimated humans, who combined endurance, skill, strategy, and morality. The humans' message was clear: harming civilians would trigger decisive action. Humanity was not a negotiable threat. It was a protective force that acted with precision and moral clarity. The fleet prepared for continued operations. Every crew member, every rescued civilian, every tactical decision was part of the larger mission. Humans had stepped into the galaxy not as conquerors, but as guardians. Their actions sent ripples across space, showing that calling for help meant calling for humans who would respond with force, strategy, and unwavering protection.